driving proud, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty_DadFF. As you can see underneath, my name is not Dynasty Dad today. It's 7-0 like whoa. You know, Smash Accept League, guys, somebody's got to come in here. You know, 7-0 is a nice little start. You know, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about my Braves being in the World Series. And guys, you know, when we had traditional playoffs where teams started, this would be the halfway point in the season. So we got a lot to talk about. But what we're going to do tonight is we're getting a lot of questions of everybody's top five, right? There's been some movers, some shakers. We're about halfway through the season, and we got to talk about some of these guys as far as dynasty rankings, as far as what these guys are worth. And who better to do that than the guys, Smash Accept crew. You know, got Mung and John both on today. Mung, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? You guys can find me on Twitter at FFA_Mung. That's MENG. 7-0 is pretty good, but some might say that it's possible to peak too soon. So I feel like
is that a knock on my age or is that a knock on my team? I might have peaked in my 20s, you know.
But I'm clawing at what I think 4-3, I believe. So I think I'm still on the upwards trajectory. So that win probability where, you know, you're at the 99-1 and then who knows, maybe you might be the Falcons.
There you go. Yeah. And you know, it's funny is, like I said, when it was Dynasty Refinery, we had 2 listener leagues. I won them both. Jared was almost dead last in both. So it's nice that all 3 of us are up near the top. Mr. Top Point Getter, you know, I know you're still slighted on that one loss there, John, but John's been absolutely killing it. High points 5 out of 7 weeks. Gotta love this start.
What's up, big dogs? I just had 3 shots of Hennessy before the show. One for me, one for Dad, and one for Mung over here. No, but hey, you know, celebrating. 6-1. You know, I had the one-off week, Dad, but I think we kind of know who's been the most dominant team overall. 5 of the 7 weeks, top score in the league. So I'm feeling pretty good. But yeah, there's already a revenge script that I'm forming in my mind when I hopefully play Dad in the playoffs and take him out.
There you go. And you also got to give a shout out to @FantasyHacker. He's made 746 trades in this league so far.
Incredible.
Dude is a maniac. Keep doing your thing, man. Keep doing your thing. So let's jump right into this. I mean, you know, this has been a crazy season like every other NFL season. And let's talk about the running backs because there's been a lot of debate. We've talked about it, you know, possibly drafting wide receiver early. I still have Christian McCaffrey as my number 1 overall dynasty running back. He's 25 years old. You know, if we look at Mike Clay, he has him at 25 years old and three months. So he's still in his prime. I know the injuries are a bit of concern, but when that guy's on the field, it's a lock, right? I mean, we're going to debate between him and 2 other guys here a little bit, but when he's out there, he's the ceiling that those guys are shooting for, right? I mean, he is a lock in points per carry, in full PPR. He's a lock for 30 points every single week he's out there. And, you know, that Carolina offense is totally missing him out there. But when he's there, and it looks like we're looking at maybe week 10, week 11, he's going to be back. I think we have a buy window here on Christian McCaffrey that we're not going to have for a while. You know, I feel like I've kicked some offers out. I offered Antonio Gibson in a first. You know, I've offered some younger players out there in a first to try to go get Christian McCaffrey. The next 2 guys we're going to talk about, I'm going to say, they're almost in that same value. But guys, talk to me about who your Dynasty 1 is and potentially why going into the season, nobody debated, right? It was Christian McCaffrey. Hands down, he was the guy. We're not even going to question it at all. But now, another injury here when we have to at least think about it, John.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. We all wondered if that workload that he had would eventually catch up to him, and it started to creep into a lot of dynasty managers' heads, certainly mine as well. And look, I mean, when he's on the field, he really is incredible to watch, and he's kind of next level in terms of how much points he can put up per game. I just kind of wonder, though, are they going to need to adjust that workload Chuba is slowly kind of establishing himself. They signed him through 25. So they need this guy to perform for them over the next few seasons. And so you could see that workload kind of on a steady decline. I mean, we'll have to see. Maybe they don't. And then, you're also kind of wondering what the heck is going on with Sam Darnold right now. Seeing ghosts again. So just a little bit of doubt that is in my mind, to the point where I've now been putting Jonathan Taylor on the top spot. I just have such a love for this guy. I think it is worth something that he's coming in at 22.
Before you go into Taylor, is this a buy window for Christian McCaffrey? I mean, I think it is. I jump in. I'm all in. Window. I got to be honest. I have him on 7 Dynasty rosters right now. He does not look sexy on the IR spot. And I have it in the back of my mind where the teams that were in the championship last year, he was not available, and that came back to bite me in a lot of spots. I mean, so is this a buy window, or is this, when he comes back, this is a sell window? I mean, I know we can look at this one of two ways, where we can say, hey, I'm buying Christian McCaffrey now, but when he comes back and he has 2 straight monster games, then do we flip him for one of these guys we're going to talk about in a little bit? I mean, is it the time to move? Yeah, I know we got to look at our rosters here, but talk to me a little bit about the value here, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'll channel Mung for a minute, but it's going to definitely depend on the deal. I think that there's certainly things you could justify buying or selling CMC. I do think it's a buy window right now, and if you could get him for, let's say, less than 3 firsts, I think you have to do that. If you can pick up one of these other guys that we're going to talk about in our top 5 and a first, you probably need to consider that as well, though, if you're considering moving him, right? And so that's why we cover a lot of this stuff, so you can kind of see you got to get another premium asset. And in my mind, you probably need another premium running back asset, because they're so hard to come by. That's typically what I would be looking for, and so we'll unpack that. But Mung, what are you thinking here?
The other thing is, I think Chuba has to be involved in the deal, right? I mean, if someone has him, that has to be in there, and you have to be a spot where you think you can put yourself over. Mung, take us away with this one.
Yeah, look, I have Taylor at 1 as of right now, but there's an argument for Christian McCaffrey, and I think there's an argument for 7 or 8 different players, right? In the middle of football season is when a lot of things are fluid, because it really depends on your record, whether you're contending and rebuilding, and if you're contending, even what your current record is. Because if you're 2-5 with a good team with McCaffrey, then it might be time to sell, because you need running back help over the next week or two to make sure that you can get to the playoffs, right? But if you're, like you are, Mike, 7-0 or 6-1, 5-2, where you're fairly certain that you're going to make the playoffs, then you can still trade for McCaffrey. And it's really tough, because it might be a cop-out, because Taylor, Swift, Barkley, I mean, McCaffrey, Zeke, Henry, Cook, Kamara, Najee Harris. Like, there's an argument for all these guys based on their ages. And the primary reason why I have Taylor, Barkley, and Swift ahead of McCaffrey right now is really just the insulated value that these guys hold due to their age. Because, I think McCaffrey is going to be fine, right? I'm not too concerned long-term about his workload or ability to stay healthy, but the perception of his value is already shifting. So if he does miss even another 2 weeks, after he comes back with a different injury, then his value just might be shot for a good while, just because of the perception that he's quote-unquote injury prone, whether or not that's true.
Yeah, one thing to look at with age, I mean, right now I have Mike Clay's top 240 up, and I have the ages on there. Sometimes the perception is Saquon's so much younger than McCaffrey, and it's 9 months, and depending on when you look at it, I know we sometimes look at those things. I mean, Najee came in a little bit later, so he's older than some of these guys. The biggest takeaway I have from what you said, and it was something that I really wanted to talk on, is, rankings is a very fluid system, right? Like, we're in the middle of the season, and that was a great point. Right now, you better believe I've been making offers for Christian McCaffrey, and Swamp Donkeys is like, it's not happening, right? But, I mean, if I'm 3-4, I'm not doing it, because I can't move a premium asset. Let's say on my team is Aaron Jones. I can't move Aaron Jones plus to get Christian McCaffrey and potentially lose my next 2 weeks and put myself in a deficit, where we talked about, 2 weeks ago, where your percentages are. If you're 6-1, you have a 98% chance of making the playoffs at this point, and that's where it's at. If you're 3-4, we figured out that was almost down to, 18%, so your percentages are not smooth if you're working in that way. The next guy we got to talk about is obviously Jonathan Taylor. I've absolutely loved Jonathan Taylor. He's 22 years old right now. He is the RB3, 579 yards, 5 touchdowns, 18 receptions, which is a nice addition there from last year. And, over the last, I believe, 3 weeks, he's been the RB2, and he's got a schedule that's coming up that's juicy like last year. He gets Jacksonville. He gets some really cushion type moves where Jonathan Taylor, this is your point here. If you can get McCaffrey plus for Taylor, which I don't know how many leagues that's even an option, you go do it. You get younger, you get the same value because Jonathan Taylor is absolutely killing it, guys.
Yeah, I looked at the stats. He's got close to 800 yards and 6 touchdowns through the 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on last week's pod, but I'll say it again. The knock on it, I think one of the things that was holding him back from that top spot was maybe the workload. He wasn't getting really the same type of bell cow workload that you saw with CMC. But again, what I'm starting to realize is that actually really helps his longevity. 21 touches this past game. Cool. He's got incredible athleticism. It just jumps off the charts, and the talent is going to get him those big plays. They're using him in the red zone. That 6 touchdowns, it's crazy. It could have been easily 10.
Yeah.
At this point in the season, he's had so many carries in red zone. You just look at just about any kind of metric on JT, and you love to see it. And so that's some of the reasoning I have. I think that what we've seen is they are going to move on from Mac, and Naheem Hines really hasn't been that much of a factor either. And those quality touches that you really want to see when it counts are going to JT. So at 22, I just love the longevity and future of this guy.
Marlon Mack's a great guy to bring up because he's someone that I'm trying to get thrown into my trades right now because there's players, there's teams, San Francisco, a lot of teams have kicked the tires on what's it going to take to get Marlon Mack, and we've seen what he's been able to do. I'm really eager for my Cam Akers shares to see what Marlon Mack can actually do coming off that Achilles injury. After this year, if McCaffrey doesn't come out and he doesn't ball out in the second half, it's a 1A, 1B with Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift. Both of them 22 years old. Swift is on pace for over 100 receptions, and that's the biggest difference there is, he's only got 260 rushing yards. He's not really been super effective there, but he's got 391 receiving yards, 42 touchdowns. That would be fantastic. 42 receptions. That's more a Derrick Henry type status if we're talking that many touchdowns. These guys are the guys that you want. These are the guys that, I got in first and second round in Smash Accept Listener League 2. Both of these guys, you can't go wrong. I know, Mung, in the beginning, Swift wasn't necessarily someone that you were believing in. Have you seen enough from him now that you're like, I think this is a guy that we definitely got to have up in this range?
Yeah, I definitely faded him in my redraft rankings. I was a little bit concerned about that groin injury, how he pretty much didn't practice the entire preseason, but clearly we're seeing that that's not really affecting him much at all. He's been very efficient as a receiver. And really, Taylor and Swift are both good in their own ways, right? Taylor comps a little bit more to that Zeke type where he can make those tough runs and then he'll catch a few passes here and there. And then Swift is really just racking up that PPR volume, and then he's getting the yards after catch as well. So, these guys both 22 years old, and that's just why I have them ahead of some of the older workhorses at this point. Because, like I said, Taylor or Swift, they could tear an ACL, knock on wood that they won't, but they could do that, and their value is still going to be a top 5 dynasty running back. But when you're talking about a 25 or 26-year-old McCaffrey or Zeke or Derrick Henry, and they go down with a season-ending injury, then their value all of a sudden plummets for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and you have that in your ranks, and I love your tiers. You got Taylor and Swift in one, and then you got that same group of guys, right? You got Henry, McCaffrey, Elliott, Kamara, Cook, all those same age brackets. You have Derrick Henry as your third highest. John and I, almost shame on both of us for not having him in our top 5. We had a whole episode last week dropping the Derrick Henry memes. We talked about him, enough. Then you have both Zeke and Kamara and Cook above, above one of the younger guys we're going to talk about. John, you have Cook. I have Najee Harris as my 4, and I have Dalvin as my 5. So why don't we talk here a little bit about the guys that are right off the bat? I mean, let's talk a little bit about Zeke and Dalvin. We've seen fantastic things for both of them this year. Zeke's over 500 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, only 100 receiving yards, but I mean, he's still catching the ball at 16. And then, we got to look at what Dalvin's been able to do, and he's been injured, but when he's out there, I mean, he's arguably right now with Christian McCaffrey out the best running back, in football sometimes, him and Derrick Henry. Talk to me about these two guys, and I mean, what we're able to see from a dynasty perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against Derrick Henry at this point, right? Because it's just, I was someone who faded him a little bit this preseason, and he just is crushing it. And there's no other way to put it. He doesn't look like he's going to slow down anytime soon. So it's just hard to rank him outside the top 5. And then I actually have Barkley high. I think I left him off of my text to you, but I've got him at 2 in that same tier as Taylor and Swift because, like I said, I think we talked about this last week too on last week's show where it's an ankle sprain, guys. Like it's a low ankle sprain, not a soft tissue injury that's going to be recurring. Like a hamstring, a calf, something like that. I think that Barkley is going to absolutely crush it over the second half of the season. So, if anything, I think he's a huge buy low as well.
Well, and he's had those 2 games before the injury where he put up over 20 fantasy points in back-to-back, and he was getting some of that rust off. John, you love Dalvin Cook. I know you have him right there above Harris. You can't argue that what Harris has been able to do behind a horrible offensive line, but that's a lot of usage there. Any fear at all with Dalvin Cook, injury history as well and age where, we got to start thinking those ways a little bit.
Yeah, you really got to factor all that in. And the one thing I will say is I think out of pure fear of Derrick Henry, he's back in my top 5. Derrick Henry,
like Waldo, you got to start hiding,
He doesn't sleep, he waits. So the one thing I will say that just gives me a little bit of pause long term. I mean, I love having him in my Smash League. Any team competing, he's who you want right now. And so I could see putting him in the top 5. The other thing to look at, though, is contracts and just what do we think is going to happen beyond his current contract. He's signed through 23 right now, unrestricted free agent in 24. All these other guys that we've talked about are signed out through 25. And that does include Dalvin Cook, who, at the age of 26 is getting up there a little bit more versus like JT and Swift, but he still has that overall skill set. He's just so explosive. He's got a bell cow workload, including in the passing game. I do kind of wonder what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota offense just a bit. But I really still like Dalvin Cook's overall talent and skill set and workload. And again, the contract is there too. So you feel pretty comfortable having him over the next 3 to 4 seasons, putting up pretty solid weekly numbers. And so that's one of the reasons that I still have him as high as I do. You asked about Najee though, and we should talk about Najee because my gosh, the workload is again what everybody loves to see. I think I for some reason I thought they would at least mix in the other guys like from time to
occasionally,
what you would think, Tomlin, but he's just the offense.
Yeah.
The one thing that you worry about is what the defense is totally keying in on him, and you look at some of his metrics right now, it does just give me a little bit of pause, right? I mean, the yards per carry and per touch type stuff is not super exciting, but again, with the volume, it all evens out. And again, you also mentioned he is 23, so he's actually older than JT and Swift, and I think that workload could catch up with them, like we've been talking about, right? Let's kind of come back to some of these themes. And so those are some of the things that I'm watching very closely, but the talent, the workload, it's all there for Najee, and I can absolutely understand having him in the top 5.
Yeah, and that's why doing this at this point in the year is kind of fun. You know, it's kind of open ended. You can kind of wherever your direction is. You know, if you're out of it, you know, you can make moves in a certain way. Or if you're in it, make moves a certain way. The guy that this is the only, you know, one where we're unanimous across the board. We all have our wide receiver one now is Jamar Chase. You know, we were flirting with it for a while. We were all on the fence, and then the dude comes out for 8 and over 200 yards. Now he has 35 receptions, 754 and 6, 754 yards in 7 games. Never been done. You know, and if you went out there and you bought him at that buy low window when he was dropping passes in camp, good for you. You know, we were on board. We were talking about it, you know, all off season. This is the guy you want. You know, between him and Jefferson, we're saying, and when they were at LSU together, Jamar Chase was a better player. And Mung and I both have Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson as our 1 and 2 in Dynasty as your wide receivers. I mean, you look at Jamar Chase is just 21 years old. Justin Jefferson, 22 years old. I mean, the future is bright for these two LSU stars. And I have a couple rosters where I have both of them, and it just feels fantastic. Mung, you know, we were telling everybody when they were talking about the drops, you got to keep Jamar Chase. You got to be patient. You got to understand this. And there were some people that just jumped ship. I mean, I saw a couple leagues where people were like, I'm going to go get Devonta Smith in a third for Chase because I'm scared about this. If you did that, whew, that's got to sting because that's not a 1-year thing. This is Dynasty. You're going to feel that for a while.
Yeah, and I know we're moving on to wide receivers, but real quick, before we finish our running back conversation, a name that we didn't really talk about too, Austin Eckler belongs in that top tier, in that top 10 conversation, potentially top 5, because he's the same age as, you know, a Zeke or McCaffrey, and his new role where he's still getting those receptions, but now he's involved in the red zone and near the goal line. You know, that's another offense that's quickly rising. So just wanted to make sure we didn't forget about Mr. Austin Eckler there. But yeah, I mean, it's all about the young guys at wide receiver, right? That's how it's always been in Dynasty because we've seen just a huge glut of injuries at the running back position. But it's hard to argue against Jamar Chase at this point. You know, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Tyreek Hill are still up there in that top tier alongside him for me.
Yeah, and I mean, can you really take this is the hardest part for me with my rankings. Is take a guy who has 52 receptions, 744 yards, and is clearly just on one of the most explosive offenses, and take Devontae Adams and just push him out. You know, like we're seeing him in that 4, 5, 6 range, and it's like I feel like when you do rankings, it's like you get excited about the new guys, but man, having Devontae Adams on your team, having Tyreek Hill on your team right now, those are total difference makers, you know. And this is kind of what we've been talking about. Is it's all dependent on where you're at. But man, I have Adams on almost every Dynasty team. I know he's got, you know, potentially might miss this week because of COVID, but if it was Sunday, I think he'd bounce back. Those guys, it's hard to bump them down anywhere past 3 for me.
I actually have Adams a little bit lower because I think there's a lot of risk there without knowing where Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing next year and where Adams himself is going to be playing next year. Now, maybe they work something out where they both try and go to the same team, but you know, at the end of the day, it's about getting that paycheck and, you know, getting your money for your family going forward. So I don't know if Adams is going to be quite so dominant without Rodgers. He's obviously still going to be very good, can crack the wide receiver 1 production, but just, you know, the risk is there that he's not going to be elite a year from now.
Oh, I get it. We almost have identical top 5s. I mean, we all have Adams in that 3, 4, 5 range, and you know, and there's some guys creeping up in there. John, I mean, between Adams and Hill, you know, and that's the difference maker there. You have Hill higher. I think we all have Hill slightly higher because he's tied to Mahomes and he's going to be there. But man, this is a ride that if you have both these guys, I mean, you're just riding it right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Chase thing, first of all, is just so gratifying on so many levels because I just loaded up with him in rookie drafts and actually gambled, took him ahead of some of the QBs in Superplex drafts. And to see what he's doing, especially after – and we all just had like maybe just a little bit of doubt because, you know, we're on Twitter. We're seeing all the hate that was coming in. And thankfully, I mean, on this pod, to your point, dad. I mean, we talked about it multiple times. We talked about not panicking on it. I really hope everyone did listen. I did have a couple of people reach out to me over the past few weeks and actually thank us for talking them off the ledge and for just all, picking them up in rookie drafts. It's unbelievable what he's doing.
That's why our off-season program was so good about bringing people on and talking about those. Yeah. And then you go on Twitter, and I had to do this as well, talk people off that edge where they're like, well, I saw he had a bunch of drops, and such said this, and I'm like, just tone it down. Right. We get so excited in the offseason that this season feels so short, right? Can you believe we're 7 weeks in? It goes so fast, so we want to have that perfect roster. I didn't mean to cut you off with that, but I was like, that's why we do this, and so that's great.
For sure. And the one thing I was kind of watching out for with Chase, and we talked about this as well in the offseason, was, all right, you got T. Higgins there, who also kind of looks like an alpha. And you got Tyler Boyd, who tore it up last year. So it's a lot of mouths to feed. Then you watch Joey B throw for over 400 yards, and his key guy really was Chase, and there was enough for all of them. I mean, T. Higgins was still getting his. Tyler Boyd's actually the one that's really taken a hit. And, Azuma has kind of shown up on the scene as making some big plays. That's an exciting team in general, Cincy right now in that offense. So Chase hitched to Joe Burrow as well, I think really does help his overall value. I do have Tyreek still at number 2, and that's the guy that I had in the top spot. Yeah, he is older, but that's okay for wide receivers. He's just such a difference maker. We all know that. He is hitched to Mahomes. And so I do still like his ceiling as being higher than Justin Jefferson, in my opinion. I do have Jefferson right there, though, at my number 3 spot. And then we talked about A.J. Brown. I actually really like Mung's tier, those top 4 guys.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are incredible. And anywhere I have those guys in my rosters, you just feel great about it. And I will make this point again. I really am at the point, and I'm a running back guy. You know that, right, Mike? But those guys, I mean, really have now kind of convinced me maybe I should, with my top overall pick, a wide receiver in a startup right now.
I mean, take an opportunity there where you get, you end up trying to get Jamar Chase. Maybe, you might be able to get A.J. Brown in the second. You might be able to get CeeDee Lamb in there. And then you form a foundation where it's like you could start getting 2, 3, 4 guys. And I know that sometimes when we start out in draft season, we look at it and we're like, yeah, but there's only so many running backs, And if you can't get one of them big ones in the beginning, I feel like that's such a way to go. Jamar Chase has moved himself up to like that 104 range in one quarterback league now. I mean,
yeah, that's
and I know I'm going to get some harassment because last week or 2 weeks ago I was saying how Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. Yep, he was. But when the guy behind him is putting up the exact same amount of points and he's 6 years younger, you can't discount that. There's a certain point where you're like, that was a nice game for Chase. Yeah, that was another really good. Okay, he is here. You cannot debate it. We knew the talent was there. He's the guy. Mung, A.J. Brown had a coming out party, right? I think there was some buy low windows in there where in Smash Accept, he's been traded 19 times. No, he's moving around. Yeah, he's all over the place. He came out. He's finally healthy. There shouldn't be any question marks there. I mean, he looked really good. And Julio just continues to be banged up.
Yeah, I want to go back to the old guys for a second. I have a question for both of you. Let's say that right now you have Cooper Kupp and you're a contender, right? And somebody offers you Devontae Adams for him straight up. What are you doing?
I take it. I know what you're saying. And to go with that question, what I was going to say is the way Cooper Kupp has played with 56 receptions, 809 yards, 9 touchdowns, and I said – after his second or third game, someone made an offer, and I'm like, this is a player who can't go up in value, just because it's like, but he should, right? Like Cooper Kupp's what, 27?
28.
28. Okay, so it's like, it's
keep
hard.
Waiting for the regression, and it just never comes.
It is like not. I saw a thing. He's actually put it on pace for a better season than Calvin Johnson ever had with Matthew Stafford, which is just crazy, right?
Wild.
But, I mean, I would rather have Devontae Adams, but I see what you're saying to start that debate because Kupp's going to be with Stafford again. But I just
question.
Devontae Adams has won me so many championships that he's a special place in my heart. Where my first ever article was about Cooper Kupp, and he started out, if you guys remember, I think it was in 2016 or 2017. He balled out for the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season. He was the wide receiver 1 and just fell off. Now, obviously, Stafford wasn't there, but that's a good one to talk about. I'm personally still taking Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I mean, look, 3rd in target share, number 1 in red zone targets among wide receivers. He's basically Devontae Adams on a different team. And you know, as you said, he's going to be staying with Stafford. We know, you know, his contract is tied there versus Adams and Rodgers. John, what about you?
I really would consider it for competing teams. I think that what you have to ask yourself is just like the overall market value of those two guys still favors Devontae Adams just a bit. I think if you look at most rankings, but for those savvy managers out there, I mean, Kupp is absolutely worth considering, just absolutely on fire. And so, yeah, I mean, I would absolutely have to consider it depending on the team. Love Kupp. I
think it's going. I think it's worth going out there and doing. I mean, because most people, if you look at their rankings, I mean, Clay has Adams at 2 and Kupp at 12, and I feel like that's probably where most people have him. You know, people have Kupp as a fringe wide receiver 1. He's balling out. You know, if you're in that situation where you might not feel like you're all the way in, or you know, you make a move where you trade Devontae Adams for Cooper Kupp plus, I think that's something that you could definitely do here.
Yeah, and you know, I texted you earlier with my prelim rankings. I had Adams at 5 and Kupp at 6, and the more I think about it, I think Kupp's at 5 and Adams is at 6 for me.
Do you have Kupp in the Smash Accept League? Maybe we'll make a trade here. No,
no, sadly not. But all I'm saying is, if you have Adams and you can get anything on top of Kupp for him right now, that's something I would.
Right on, Mom. That's good advice. Good advice. Yeah, I have to brag, just a humble brag. I have a roster. This week, I had Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, and A.J. Brown all on the same team. Ooh. Those 3 guys outscored my opponent alone.
Yeah, that's over 100 right there, man. That's nasty. That's great.
Incredible. Good stuff.
Is there anybody else worth debating in that top section? I mean, you know, like, obviously, DK Metcalf, you know, I mean, he's got 530 and 6 receptions, and I feel like people are acting like – and Lamb's been frustrating for me. You know, like you guys know I love him, but he's in that same range, 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. And both of these guys, I feel like people are like Metcalf. Everybody wanted to make him the Dynasty wide receiver 1, and then he's having a good season. It's not it's not the same kind of numbers as these other guys up here, but he's obtainable now, and CeeDee Lamb's obtainable now. Where they're not. Jamar Chase is the new hotness, right? So those guys start to come off that a little bit, and I think you could probably get that plus.
I do have. I would say I have CD pretty clearly above DK.
Yeah,
I'm just going all initials here, but CD I think has got more mid to long term value. I mean, look at DK's situation without Russ. I mean, Russ may be leaving town.
Yeah,
it really does appear like that may happen, and he almost is starting to look like he is just a bit dependent on the big play. And so there's some risk there. Again, you still bet on the talent, but that's why I have those other guys a bit above DK.
Yeah.
But, you know, watching him with Geno Smith, it's not really fair to him.
It's not, but he's still putting up numbers. I mean, you look, 26.8 in the game where Russ went out, 11.8 in the next one, 17.6. You know, he's still getting 50 to 100 yards every single game. He's still going out there and doing
Unbelievable talent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Geno realizes that he needs to look that way, even though I'm not going to try to say Geno Smith's a good quarterback or anything like that. But let's move on to the tight end position just to kind of keep things rolling there. Anything else either of you guys want to talk about with wide receivers? I mean, there's been so many guys to talk about. Deebo Samuel is the wide receiver 6, Hollywood Brown, or Deebo's 5, Hollywood Brown 6. Mike Evans never gets enough love. I mean, he's 500 yards and 7 touchdowns, and you could probably get him for just 1 first and a throw-in type player. I've been trying to get him everywhere, you know, and I own him everywhere, but I'm trying to get him in all those other leagues. You know, Mike Williams has been fun.
Yeah, I'll throw a question out there, but is Deebo Samuel now in consideration to be a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty? Top 12. You have Deebo somewhere in that range.
Not for me. Just because how many years? This is his third year. You know, he's a little bit older, and the fact that he has not done it before. I mean, he has not been able to be on the field, and that's been the biggest problem for him. Is just hasn't been able to stay out there on the field. I mean, Mung, what do you think?
So my answer is technically no, but I've got
you have a 13.
You have a
13. Yeah,
so, I mean, it's hard to argue against the production. I mean, he's become that clear X receiver in Shanahan's offense. He's being used creatively behind the line of scrimmage as well. We know he's a yards after the catch machine. And look, I know that, you know, Shanahan's starting to get some hate because of just how awful the Niners have looked, but I still have faith in Trey Lance, and I think that this offense still has the potential to go absolutely nuclear once Lance gets a few starts under his belt.
Yeah, I agree. I would love that.
That's part of the ceiling scenario for Debo. And remember when we did see Trey Lance, Debo looked really good. He got a lot of action with Lance. So, yeah, I think that he is starting to kind of creep up there, but he does have to stay healthy. That ceiling scenario for Debo is playing out this season so far. It's been fun to watch.
Mung, I'm going to ask you this because we're in the same area here. Are we throwing out offers for Brandon Ayuk? I mean, it's been a complete disappearing act, and we were all kind of big on him because he's what we wanted. Debo's what we wanted him to do, right? That's what we wanted him. Are we throwing out some offers there? I mean, have you guys been seeing things on Twitter? Have you guys been involved in any trades, seen any trades? Because I feel like he's completely forgotten. And now to a point where people are bringing up Dante Pettis, because Dante Pettis he balled out when he first came in, and now he's on the Giants scoring points, and it's like, is Shanahan such a genius that we're able to like draft these guys and it's not happening, or are we starting to question that a little bit?
Yeah, and I don't think that you're buying him if you're contending, because I don't know that it's going to happen without a Deebo Samuel injury or something, and perhaps a trade, although I don't envision the Niners moving him this early in his career. I think I'm buying. I don't know if I'm paying a first right now.
I know. I was going to ask that. A second.
If I can get Ayuk for a second, yeah, I think he's worth a shot. Because like we said, for the same reason that we're hesitant to put Deebo Samuel in that clear top 12 is because of his injury history.
Yeah.
So, that it could just be, a hamstring strain away from Brandon Ayuk wide receiver 1 season, right? So I do think he's a buy low right now, but there's enough risk where maybe we never, have him see the light of day again with Shanahan, where I would not pay a first round rookie pick.
Now, I'm not just saying this because I just traded for him, but I'm here. DeAndre Hopkins is obtainable at this point, and DeAndre Hopkins, where people say he hasn't broke 100 yards this year, he's not getting the same target share, still 420 yards and 7 touchdowns. John, Hopkins, I know somebody that near and dear to your heart.
I love Nuke. Yeah.
I mean, what is fair value to go out there and buy Nuke? I mean, what I did today was Brandon Cooks a first and a third, for DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like that's a kind of move that I would make all day long. Because I feel like DeAndre Hopkins, the way he's taken care of his body, the way he has been healthy his entire career, could be a guy that plays Larry Fitzgerald type, where he could play. Right now he's 28, turning 29. He could play till he's 32 and still put up solid numbers, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. I love Nuke. I thought you had great value. I mean, those kinds of deals where, it's a couple of firsts. If you can shoot a couple of firsts or a first and an asset or two, package something. I was a little jealous. I mean, I really love Nuke. So nice job on that one. He really hasn't, they haven't needed to throw to him a ton. They haven't really been playing from behind. I mean, obviously they're undefeated, but remember, he's the clear top guy with Kyler. He's got the contract, and he's definitely got the longevity, to your point. He just doesn't seem to I mean, I feel like the stats are he like never misses a game.
Right.
He's like on the injury report a lot, and he grinds it out, and he always seems to be open, balls out, makes the big plays. He does everything you want. So yeah, he's a guy that I think for sure is a good buy right now, because the overall volume has just been slightly down. Obviously he's getting the touchdowns, and I think that could probably continue in that offense.
The other guy, Mung, I definitely want to talk about is Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is a wide receiver 24 right now, and people are discounting him. They're moving him way down. at the Tennessee game, he put up 24 points. You know, he's had one game outside above or below 15 points. He's been right there, but just with some of these other big names and people doing things, Stephon Diggs is starting to get a little bit more discounted out there. I mean, you know, Emmanuel Sanders was catching all the touchdowns, but if Stephon Diggs catches 2 of those, you know, 6 or 7 that Sanders has, I think we're talking about a different type of value here with Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and I think Diggs and Hopkins are easy to talk about in the same breath because their issues are very similar, right? Because both are on high-octane offenses, but the difference between 2020 and 2021 is that these quarterbacks have evolved a little bit where the offense is actually better when they don't hyper-target their number one guys. Now, that isn't to say they're not still seeing large target shares. The primary difference is that it's not quite as insane as they were last
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So yeah. I do think both are buy lows to an extent, but keep in mind that DeAndre Hopkins is the oldest of this bunch that we've been talking about. I think he's got a year or two on Diggs. So, you know, Hopkins is down in that wide receiver 9-10 range for me now in Dynasty. I think, you know, to your guys' points, he'll be fine. I just don't know that he's going to be quite in that elite tier at this point.
One other wide receiver I want to talk about, because we talked about Debo as that fringe wide receiver 1, is just going to give you targets here and see if you guys can tell me who this is. 10, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14 over his last 7 games healthy.
It sounds like maybe DJ Moore or
Deontay Johnson.
Oh, Deontay Johnson. Okay. Yep.
When healthy, and it's not the prettiest, but the guy just gets absolutely peppered. And he's been putting up numbers where I feel like he's one of the cheapest wide receiver 2s out there because people look at it in a similar fashion that they used to with Jarvis Landry, right? Where he's just catching passes. You know, he's not doing anything spectacular. Because on the season, I mean, he has, right now, he only has 1 receiving touchdown. But again, or 3 receiving touchdowns. I'm sorry, I can't read. I had to get my readers out again, Monk. You know, I'm getting a little older here after 40. But I mean, I've been trying to acquire him in some trades where a lot of people are really frustrated with Allen Robinson. You know, and I feel like I've been trying to put Allen Robinson in a little bit to get a Deontay Johnson. Add a little bit to Deontay Johnson if you want, but let's talk about Allen Robinson because before I accepted that Brandon Cooks for DeAndre Hopkins deal, I got an Allen Robinson for Brandon Cooks offer, and I rejected it. And that feels so weird, right? Because we're just like, Allen Robinson is an absolute stud. But I saw, you know, Yahoo put an article out today where I think it was Andy Bayron said if he does not post double-digit points this week, he's droppable in redraft. I mean, that's insane because Allen Robinson has been the staple of consistency, and we were saying this is going to be arguably his best year because he's going to get some good quarterback play, but it has been so abysmal there in Chicago. What can we do with Allen Robinson? You got to hold, right? You can't sell for pennies on the dollar, but he's 29 years old.
I think you do need to be a little bit patient because keep in mind, I mean, he could be
28. Sorry.
He could be moving this offseason somewhere else with a much better situation. And he always seemed to put up numbers year after year without the good QB. I mean, I don't want to talk down on the Bears in front of Mung, but, I think that it's a little bit dysfunctional right now. They don't seem to really have an identity much on offense. And so I think that if you can be patient on A-Rob for some of this season, he's worth the hold. I mean, it's just not the time to be selling A-Rob.
Well, it's a weird situation where if you're in a retool, I think Allen Robinson is got to be a buy, right? I feel like you can move one of these guys, one of these veterans that are putting up more points because he could get traded before the November 2nd deadline. If not, he is a free agent, and there's no way they're slapping the franchise tag on him again after this kind of season. But we've seen it year in and year out where he's been that fringe guy. Mung, anything to add there with Allen Robinson? I mean, I'm getting so many questions about Allen Robinson. People are like, should I trade him for? And then some of the names I get I'm like, what? Like, you get names and you're like, no, I can't say yes to that. But it just gets crazy.
Yeah, and I would value him similarly to Brandon Ayuk, right? Both of these guys who we think, or at least, feel that they're good players. So ideally you're holding and you're not selling low, but at the same time, I don't know that I'm aggressively buying. I don't know that I would pay a first for Allen Robinson right now
No.
because, like you said, he is going to be 29 years old heading into next season. And we know that wide receivers can sometimes struggle when they move to new teams, having to learn the playbook, build that chemistry with a new quarterback. So, he doesn't have all that long to really rebound with his dynasty value before he hits 30, and then his value's, very much on the fritz. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think he makes sense for a rebuilding team, but at the same time, he's a risky buy right now, and really you're hoping to hold, and then maybe he gets traded over the next week or two.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sound likely either, given the Bears management. So it's just a tough situation right now, and really, it's not good if you have them, but there's not much you can do. Sometimes you just have to hold.
Yeah, well, let's move to tight end. I feel like the quarterback is going to be a fun debate. So let's try to keep the tight end one a little bit close. We all have. John, you and I both still have Kelsey as one, but with what Kyle Pitts has done, it's like if you're drafting today, I'm drafting Kyle Pitts over.
Yeah, I kind of get it.
And it's
I'm a little stubborn on Kelsey, I guess. I just love the guy so much.
So here's one thing I want to put out there, and it's like with the amount of times he's lining up as a true tight end. Kyle Pitts gets changed over to wide receiver next year, is this changing the value? We have to look at this we have to look at it because he is not lining up at tight end. He is basically a wide receiver right out there. They haven't changed Kelsey's designation. I'm just saying if that ever happens, we definitely got to think of that. But if he stays at tight end, he's clearly, once the season's over, nobody can debate he's the tight end one. You can't say going into next year, John, that you're going to take Kelsey over Pitts if we're getting to a draft.
I really can't argue with you on it. And yeah, if I'm doing a startup anytime for the remainder of the season, Kyle Pitts should be really the first tight end off the board. Incredible what he's doing. I thankfully have him on a couple of teams. It's been fun watching his progression already. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going to happen with Atlanta next year, but they're going to make him the focal point most likely over time. I just still kind of revere Travis Kelce, and even at the age of 32, I just really feel like he will continue to produce. He is signed through 2025, hitched to Mahomes, one of the most consistent fantasy assets at any position. And we just haven't seen anything close to that kind of consistency from Pitts. It's really not fair to him. That's kind of why I still throw Kelsey out there as the number one dynasty tight end. But to your point, it really should be Pitts, though. Yeah. It really should be Pitts.
Yeah. Now, Mung, you have Pitts at 1. Still holding on to Kittle at 2. And John, you and I both have Waller at 3. There's some injury concerns there for both of them. Kittle's injuries are just piling up like crazy, and we there's no debate the talent there. But both of these guys, obviously, a little bit of injury concern there. TJ Hawkinson's kind of been up and down. We all have him in that top 5 as well, respectively so. It's like the Lions are – you watch the first half and they – Swift – because I have Swift and Hawkinson on so many teams. You're like, oh, they both got 3 points. Well, there's slop time. It's coming, and it happens nonstop. Jared Goff's just like, oh, here's a 3-yard out to Swift. Here's a 5-yard slant to Hawk, and that's basically how it is. The guy that I want to talk about, and on top of this is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is secretly having a fantastic tight end season, and he's still kind of discounted. Right now he is the tight end 2 when it comes to fantasy football. And I feel like he's not being valued anywhere close to that, guys.
Yeah, I think it's just because his production has come from a couple of huge games, right? Kind of like the Tyler Lockett effect that we've seen in prior years where, yeah, it's great when Mark Andrews goes off, not so much when he goes for, 2 catches for 45 yards on a given week. But overall, Baltimore is throwing the ball more. Their defense, which is dealing with some injuries, is forcing them into some of these shootout game scripts. So, yeah, I think he's definitely, still in that top 2 tiers, the 1A, 1B, however you want to parse them out. But, you talked about how Mark Andrews is the number 2 scoring tight end. through 7 weeks and being undervalued. And I'll throw out Mike Gesicki, who's the
Yeah.
number 3 tight end through 7 weeks, and he's still being treated as a back end tight end 1, and he's leading all tight ends in slot snaps, and he's a free agent. So depending on where he goes, he could go to a pass happy team and just keep this production going. And I think that he needs to be in the conversation for top 5.
He's an athletic freak for sure, and it's been nice seeing his evolution. The other guy, John, you messaged me where Waller was the only guy I had that wasn't on bye on my one team, and then he was out, and I said, well, I own Waller on 9 teams, and I have Zach Ertz as my backup on all 9, and Zach Ertz came in, and I mean, he's had back-to-back really nice-looking games with that Arizona offense. Speaking of the Arizona offense, Mung, John and I both have Mahomes still at QB1. You've made the jump. You got Kyler in that number 1 spot. Talk to me a little.
Yeah, I mean, it was between Kyler or Tom Brady, so I went with the younger guy. But,
Nice.
I love it. Hey, Tom Brady
so
at least hooked up the guy with a little bit of Bitcoin, right? I mean, my man gives away that 600th passing touchdown and asks for $1,000 at the team store. Come on, bro. You got a winning lottery ticket. You don't want to look what it's worth. That's like, oh, I won the Powerball tonight. I don't want to see what it's worth. Anybody want to give me $100 in NFL jerseys? Or $1,000 in NFL jerseys? I can't argue with that. I cannot argue with putting Kyler up there. I still have Mahomes as my 1, and I feel like I still have Josh Allen as my 2, and Josh Allen, 15 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions, 214 yards on the ground. Kyler, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I feel like those 3 guys, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar Jackson is the QB4, and really on pace to almost throw for 5,000 yards, which for him is just insane, or up over 4,000 some, have the best year of his career. I don't think you can argue with any of those guys in your top 5. John?
Yeah, I kind of just want a piece of all of them. Like if I'm in 10 drafts, I'm going to split it up: 3 Mahomes, 3 Josh Allen, 3 Kyler Murray if I possibly can. The one thing that I just kind of get concerned with Kyler is just the size. I mean, he's just a little Ewok running around out there, and you're just worried.
That's Zeke. Zeke looks like an Ewok.
Have you actually guys seen the meme of Kyler Murray as an Ewok? It's
no, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, definitely take a look at that one.
Wait,
but
you guys both have Dak at 5.
Yeah.
I have Justin Herbert. I mean, I've loved what I've seen from Justin Herbert. You can argue Joe Burrow's kind of looked like he's got to be up in that area. The one guy that just keeps, I feel like is still obtainable just because of his age and his past is Matthew Stafford. He's the QB6 right now.
Yeah.
And he's balling out.
There.
19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he's just insane value if you can go out and get him. These guys are not obtainable. The guys we're talking about. The other guy who is the 1 and 2, right? Tom Brady is the QB1 and Jalen Hurts is the QB2. And those guys are still obtainable in Dynasty, where I saw today someone posted a mid-22 first in Superflex and a 22 second, and Twitter was absolutely smashing the mid-first side versus Jalen Hurts. And I feel like with what we've seen so far, I don't think the Eagles are not backing off Jalen Hurts. It hasn't been pretty, but it has been safe.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a Twitter narrative that I'm not sure is really going to play out that way in real life.
Yeah.
And as long as he's still playing there, he's a great fantasy QB. So I think just take advantage of some of the narrative that might be out there about his future, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And see if you can get him at a value.
Yeah, and if there's teams in that mid-range right now, they're 4-3, 3-4, and they have Tom Brady, throw a first there now. 2 years ago we were saying go buy Tom Brady for a late first, and you could. Now, like you get to that age where people start looking at an age, right? And they're like, oh man, Tom Brady's this age, he's not going to keep doing it. Go out there and make an offer. Honestly, I mean, that's a game-changing type move where if you can get Tom Brady, and get a little bit on top of some of these other guys you might not trust as much, some of those young up-and-coming players. Mung, what would you be willing to pay for to get Tom Brady, as well as in terms of picks?
Yeah, look, this is going to sound crazy, and it's definitely not the right move for long-term value. But if I have a first and a second and a stacked team with just one need at QB2 in Superflex, I'd pay that first and second for
Hmm.
Brady over Hurts
Oh,
right now.
I agree.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I
Like,
might just remind everyone in the Smash Accept initial draft, I traded Mong here a first to move up in the draft and take Brady. And it looked like, I don't know, it looks like a baller move now.
Did you not? And then we moved him though, right?
I
With
did.
another
I traded
first to get Aaron Rodgers. So then Mung was like, ha ha.
That was a second, but yeah, that
Yeah.
was just like for longevity.
Yeah.
That's the only thing with Brady, right? It's just how much longer can this guy do it?
Yeah.
You know?
he's only got like 4 or 5 years left. That's it.
It's craziness. It's crazy.
Fantastic.
And the top 10 are who we thought they were. I mean, it's Brady, it's Hurts, it's Murray, Jackson,
They are
Mahomes,
who they
Stafford,
thought they were.
Allen, Rodgers, Burrow, and Herbert, right? But then, I mean, Dak had the week off, so I mean, Dak's the next guy. Dak and Carr are in there. But I get a lot of questions this time of year where some guys that go out there and make offers for Kirk Cousins still seems to be the cheapest dude out there in Superflex. I traded Trey Sermon and a late second for Kirk Cousins in a QB needy team the other day, and I was loving it.
Yeah. Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Derek Carr 12 and 5. And there's the rest of that tween group aside from Tannehill's a little ugly. I mean, it's Carson Wentz, it's Daniel Jones, it's Tyler Heineke, it's Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, and then your boy John Mac Jones had a little bit of a coming out here. His first 300-yard game and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think you could argue he's probably had the best rookie QB season so far. I mean, he looks like a gamer. I mean, all these guys, again, you have to be patient. It'll take time for them to open up the playbook, but Mac Jones is getting the job done on the field. And so, people keep asking, like, Mac Jones or Zach Wilson. I'm like, are you serious? Mac Jones. Always has been Mac Jones for me.
Now, what should we be doing with Trevor Lawrence right now? I mean, I don't own him anywhere because I didn't have the 101. But what are we willing to pay for him? I mean, it's been a frustrating start here. The talent's undeniable, but I'm getting questions. I'm getting questions on Trevor Lawrence. I'm getting questions on Trey Lance, and I'm getting a lot of really crazy concerns on Justin Fields. And we've been big on all 3 guys. Guys, help me out here. Talk him off the ledge, just like we talked him off the ledge with Jamar Chase. Or are we jumping off the ledge?
Yeah, I got stuff to say on all 3 of the rookies.
Let's do it.
Real quick,
Let's hear it, yeah.
the tween names that you mentioned, I think Tannehill's the big buy for me, even over Kirk Cousins.
Totally. Yes, thank
he's
you.
He's starting to turn it on, and we all know how
Yes.
great Derrick Henry is, but we know that at some point Tannehill's going to throw for some touchdowns, and he ran one in this past week too. We know he has some legs as
Agreed.
well. So just wanted to throw that out there. But look, lightning round real quick. Justin Fields, he's been playing without pretty much his first and second string offensive line. That offensive line has been brutal. Matt Nagy's play calling and lately Bill Lazor's play calling. It doesn't really matter when your offensive line is just absolutely garbage. So I would not panic over Justin Fields, although I was not as high on him coming out as Lance or Lawrence. Lawrence has looked fine. He's starting to use his legs more. We know that he can run as well, even though that's not really been talked about as much. But I think preach calm with all these guys, right? Trey Lance only had the 1 start, threw for less than 200 yards, but he was, an inch away. He got stopped on the goal line because 2 defenders tackled him at the same time. With that 1 rushing touchdown, even with a brutal day as a passer, he would have been a top 12 fantasy quarterback that week. So no worries long-term just yet about any of these 3. If you drafted them, you weren't immediately expecting them to be absolutely elite. So, quarterback, the quarterback position, not everybody can be Justin Herbert, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's definitely patience. You got to wait on these guys. I still haven't really adjusted my rankings a whole lot. I always had Lawrence and Lance a little bit higher. I am a bit concerned on Justin Fields, just a little bit, but agree with what Mung said there. And again, we talked about Mac Jones, and then it's like a little further down there. He's somewhere Zach Wilson.
Love it, guys. Hey, great podcast. You know, it's been enjoyable. 7 weeks in, you know, and I'm just pumped for these last couple of weeks here. John, what do you got going on? And, you know, why don't you tell us exactly what you're excited for this week?
Yeah, this is just another reminder. Just enjoy fantasy. Have fun. Enjoy each week that you have. And, you know, go make some trade offers. Mix it up. Have some fun with your teammates, or your league mates, I should say. And that's really, again, what we're always here. That's why we do these pods, is to really kind of help the community out there and help you with your trades, help you with your rosters and lineups. That's what I love. And just kind of soaking it up each week. So I started it off with beast mode quote, and I'll close with another Marshawn Lynch quote here. Take care of y'all chicken, take care of y'all bodies, take care of y'all mentals.
Dude, I think that should be our normal close the rest of the way. That's good stuff. I love it. You and I have talked on the phone about that. I mean, enjoy this, you know, and it's easy to say because we're winning all the time. No, but seriously, guys, enjoy fantasy football. Enjoy watching the game, you know, and make those decisions and then let it go. Put your phone away. Put your computer away. Watch the football, and you're going to be surprised, you know. Several years back, I used to be, like, on my phone oh, that guy got a touchdown. Where am I at? Just watch it. Have fun. Enjoy it. Mung, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you guys can find all my stuff over at Fantrax, and then on Twitter at FFA_Mung. That's MENG. And really, you know, we talk a lot about specific trades and specific player values, but in general, too, you know, some general advice in terms of dynasty trading. There are days when I send out, you know, 10 to 12 dynasty trade offers, and there are days where I send out none, right? It depends on evaluating your team, whether you really need to make moves for a couple teams, or if you think, you know, I just need McCaffrey or Chubb or Hunt back from injury in a couple weeks, and, you know, I'll ride it out. I'll be fine if I make it to even 5-5, right, in a couple weeks. So really just evaluating your own rosters, how many points your team's scoring from week to week, and then, you know, making those calls as you go along. So good luck out there.
Yeah, that's smart. I do that every Tuesday, right? Tuesdays are one day we got waiver Wednesday, we got football on Thursday, you know, we got busy lives on the weekends. Every Tuesday, it's like assess that team and see where you're at and make those minor tweaks. And I love that. That's great advice, guys. So thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process.